no seafood in Paella Valenciana. And if you want to be very traditional about it, no chorizo either.
After many requests on what paella video to review next, today we're going to be seeing Kenji López making his Paella Valenciana. And if you are new to the channel, my name is James. I've been cooking for many years in the United States and over here in Europe, and I have plenty of other videos on my YouTube channel as well as several paella recipes. And if you do happen to enjoy this video, then don't forget to give it a like and maybe a share, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, let's get started.
Hey everyone, it's Kenji, and I'm gonna make a Paella Valenciana. And pardon my pronunciation.
This is going to be a bit of a different video today, isn't it? We're going to be saying this in first person.
Paella Valenciana, or as they call it in Colombia, Paella Valenciana, which is just what I'm going to call it from now on because that's just sort of my natural Spanish accent is a Colombian one.
For those of you that don't know a lot about Spanish, like English, there are many different dialects and many different variations depending on what type of Spanish you're speaking. Just like in English. American English is not the same as British English, but then again, depending on where you are in England and even in the British Isles, the English will be different. And the same thing here in Spain. If you go to Madrid, they're going to pronounce a little differently. If you go to Andalusia, they're going to drop the S's and speak very quickly. And it's very difficult to understand Andaluz. At least it is for me being an English speaker. And then, of course, you have many other languages also spoken here in Spain.
I'm doing this mainly right now to test out this wok burner to see whether it works on works for a paella pan as well, and I don't see why it won't, so I hope it will.
If you don't have the setup, the actual rings to cook the paella pan on outside, you can use whatever you have. Even a wood fire would work. You don't necessarily need to cook with gas. Traditionally it's made over a wood fire, but I would think that this wok burner is going to be maybe a little too powerful. Maybe a little bit.
All right, so the first thing we're gonna do, get a good amount of olive oil in here, and wow, I can already tell that's too hot.
It looks like he's using extra virgin to cook with, and that's pretty common to use over here.
So Paella Valenciana is generally made with chicken and rabbit. I do not have any rabbit, so I'm doing it with just chicken. You might also, in some parts of Valencia, you might find it done with snails. That would not be an uncommon thing, but my daughter actually has snails here. She has a little terrarium and keeps a snail collection, but I'm not about to raid her tank.
Snails in general are not that common. Some people do enjoy them, some people like them. But even when I was in France, we used to have snails escargot on the menu, and not everyone would eat them. Now, one quick thing about the chicken that he's using. Firstly, the size pieces are way too big, and it's too much for this size paella pan. It's way too much. But as far as the rabbit is concerned, if you don't have rabbit, that's fine. You can use just chicken to make this. I mean, rabbit is not necessarily easy to get everywhere. Here it is. Here I can just walk into the grocery store and buy it. And if you haven't tried rabbit before, I would highly suggest to try it because it is very tasty.
Things that are not traditionally in Paella Valenciana, seafood. That would be a paella mixta or a paella de mariscos, depending on what you put in it. But no seafood in Paella Valenciana. And if you want to be very traditional about it, no chorizo either. Although I personally do enjoy the flavor of chorizo in a paella. There are some people, mainly on Reddit, who would be visibly angered by putting chorizo into a paella. But you know what? I guess as long as you don't call it Paella Valenciana, do whatever you want. And even if you do want to call it Paella Valenciana, even if it isn't, who's going to stop you?
That's true. As long as you're not making it for TV, you can do whatever you want at home. But you'd have to ask Jamie that, because Jamie has more experience in that department than most people. But you know what? If you do get to make the news here in Spain that you made the wrong paella, that itself is an accomplishment.
So I'm gonna do a couple cups of rice here, about 2.5 cups. I'd say that's around 200 grams or so.
You want about 100 grams per person when making paella, about 100, because you don't have just the rice, you have other ingredients that are going into making the paella. And if you are making a paella for about 5 people, you want about a 50 centimeter pan. It's a pretty big pan. It's very important to have more surface area for the rice and the other ingredients to cook instead of them just boiling, because you don't want a boiled paella. You want the paella to have flavor.
The way I learned to make paella was at a restaurant called Toro.
Now, as Kenji was saying earlier that the paella pan was a little too hot, you can see that because the chicken right now is already starting to burn. The burners that you typically use with the paella pan are not that powerful. You can still burn the paella pretty easily if you're not careful with it and if you don't move it in the beginning. They're not as powerful as this wok burner.
We did a couple paellas there, cooked them to order. My favorite one was the mixto, which is made with lobster stock. Lobster and chicken stock, which we made by roasting lobster shells and chicken bones, and then we would cook them down into cook them down with a bunch of roasted vegetables, into a delicious stock. This thing is obviously going to take a bit of adjustment. It's real hot. So this burner is 160,000 BTUs.
You know, I have to admit that I'm starting to like this first-person view quite a bit because it actually gives you the perspective of cooking. It's pretty cool.
All right, so we're looking just to get a little bit of browning on this chicken. So far I've seasoned it with some kosher salt, and that's it.
Now, if you're in a similar situation and you have burnt the chicken a little bit, not that much, but the paella pan is starting to turn darker and darker because the pan is burning, it's a good idea to take it off the heat, take the chicken out, and either clean the pan or get another one. If you have a little bit at the end, it's understandable because you're trying to get the socarrat and you haven't been moving everything around, that's fine. But the other thing is at the very beginning of the process, if the pan is already burnt, it's a better idea to wash it. It's a bit of a pain to do it, but you know, in the end, it's about the flavor.
I'm gonna dump in some beans. So typically in paella, you'd have beans called judías verdes, which are, I believe in the US we call them runner beans. So they're kind of thicker, wider than typical green beans.
There is one bean though that is very common to see with the Paella Valenciana called garrafón. And these are basically, it's a very big lima bean. They're pretty big.
But I'm using green beans because I am currently chicken sitting my neighbor Alana's chickens, and she has a bunch of green beans growing in her garden and told me to help myself, so I did.
Now, Kenji said that he's chicken sitting his neighbor's chickens, and today he's making a chicken paella. Now, I don't think that these are his neighbor's chickens, I don't, but these are pretty big chickens.
And then the other ones are these, which in Spanish are, I think they're called garrafón, I don't know. The Spanish they speak in Spain is very different from the Spanish they speak in Colombia, and so I'm familiar with all the food terms for Colombian Spanish, but not for the Spanish they speak in Spain, so I don't really know. But they're lima beans. Lima beans are butter beans. If you can get them fresh, cool. I'm using them frozen just because that's what I have.
Now, when I was working in hotel arts, it was very international. I was one of only 2 native English speakers in the hotel. There was another Englishman there, but we had a lot of other Spanish speakers. We had Spanish, we also had Mexicans, Venezuelans, Argentinians. I mean, literally just about everyone from every single Spanish-speaking country. And then someone would be mixing like local slang and Argentinian. Then I'm used to Mexican Spanish, so I would hear some Mexican words and, yes, this I understand. So at first it was very difficult. And just to give you an idea, the word coger here in Spain is a very common word to use for everything. It means to grab. And it's very common to use here. It's not a bad word. Now, in other places, this word is a very dirty word. So depending on what type of Spanish you're speaking, you have to be careful with what words you use.
We're gonna clear out another little spot here. And then in is gonna go some garlic. A few cloves that I've chopped. You don't want to let that burn, so we're gonna mix it right in with everything else.
Yes, as we know from experience, garlic is very, very easy to burn. So this is something that you don't add at the very beginning, especially minced garlic, because it's much smaller and it will easily burn. You want to add it, as Kenji is doing now, a little later on.
These are enormous chicken legs. I got them at the local Latin market. The thighs I had to cut into 2 pieces each because they're so gigantic. I don't know where these chickens come from, monster chickens.
What a relief. They're not his neighbor's chickens. But he is right about this. These are some enormous sized pieces.
Tomatoes. So these are just Roma tomatoes that I'm gonna do the same thing, make a little space for. And then I'm gonna grate them on a box grater.
So Kenji right now is making the sofrito. And this is a very, very good little trick because you don't want tomato cubes. You can either do it by hand with a grater, or you can cut them up a little smaller and then blitz them with the hand blender.
This is a great way. Oops. Well, as long as you don't drop it on the ground like that. What's next? All right, so now we're getting into our final layer of seasoning. That's gonna be some of this, which I always have trouble opening these damn jars. All right, pimenton.
Kenji has the exact same pimenton that I get at Mercadona.
Spanish smoked paprika. About a couple teaspoons of it, say.
When making the paella, you want to use pimentón dulce, sweet paprika. The smoked paprika will say ahumado, it'll say smoked on the box. And you can add a little smoked if you want, but it's powerful. Let me just put it that way. You don't need to add that much either of the pimentón. It adds color. It also adds flavor. If you put it into the paella pan early and you don't move it, you need to be careful because it also, you can run the risk of burning it quite quickly.
And saffron, a pinch of it. Saffron, ounce for ounce, the most expensive thing in the world, I think. I don't know. What's more expensive? There's probably some drug out there that's more expensive.
Saffron is very expensive, and there probably are other things that are more expensive, but in any case, saffron adds a lot of flavor to a dish, so you don't need that much. A little will go a very long way, and it will also add color to the dish as well. But you have to be careful when buying saffron, because there is a massive, massive counterfeit market. There's also another type of Mexican saffron, which is not true saffron, and it's much cheaper.
Traditionally, and I think typically in Spain, the way this is now done is that you would add your liquid, let the chicken cook a little bit, and then sprinkle in the rice. But I prefer, personally, to do mine more similar to like a risotto. So I'm gonna add my rice directly to this pan so that it has a chance to toast a bit. I personally think it gives it a better finished texture. So similar to how toasting rice before you make risotto gives you rice that has a little bit of a bite to it at the end, even after it's cooked. It's gonna do a similar thing here.
You see it done both ways. And if you do have very large pieces of chicken, well, not this big, but you can add the liquid first and help cook the meat a little longer than you would before you add the rice to it. But the big difference between the paella and risotto is that you're continuously scraping off the starch on the rice, which helps thicken and make a beautiful creamy sauce. The paella, on the other hand, is different. You don't want that creaminess like the risotto, but there is a type of creaminess from the fat and from the other ingredients and the olive oil that you add that you do want after the liquid has reduced. You want that crust. That's not just on the bottom from the socarrat, but you also want it on the top. Because if the rice looks at the end like it's boiled, where it doesn't have this like coating of fat on top, it doesn't look as tasty.
I'm adding my rice. By the way, this is definitely possible to do on an indoor burner. You just do it on your biggest burner. You just have to kind of move it around a little bit so that the paella pan heats evenly. This is a big pan. This is a 16-inch, I believe, maybe 17-inch. So this one is enough to make paella for like 5 or 6 people. If you do it on an indoor burner, you just have to kind of move the pan around so that as it cooks, so that you kind of heat the bottom surface evenly.
Now, this being a 16-inch pan, it should be good for about 3 to 4 people. With the paella, again, we're not cooking it like risotto. With the risotto, you continuously stir it, so the rice continuously moves and is cooked evenly. Now, if you have a paella that is this thick, since you're not moving the rice on the bottom will cook faster than the rice on top. So when you have a bigger pan, the rice is spread out more, it has more surface area to cook. It'll cook faster as well. It won't take as long, and it will cook more evenly.
All right, so the ratio I use is if you have 2.5 cups of rice, hold on a second, I do double, about 2.5 times what I did before. So that was 2.5 times the volume of water as there is rice. That's about the ratio I use. All right, let me go address my daughter and I will be right back.
Bomba is one of those types of rice that will absorb a lot of stock, and you also lose a little bit with evaporation. So you want about a 3-to-1 ratio. It's always good to have extra though on hand, extra stock on hand just in case. He's using water today, which if you don't have chicken stock, it's understandable. I mean, you already have a lot of the chicken legs and the bones in this right now that's cooking. So you will have the chicken fat. That's not an issue. It's just that if you already have a chicken stock already made, it's already condensed, it adds more flavor to it.
You know what's funny? I should have checked that the ground here was level before I started, because all the liquid's pooling on one side, but hopefully that won't make a huge difference.
Yes, that is actually a very good tip. When cooking outside, you do want to make sure that your setup is level, because you can see it right now.
And if I'm insulting anyone from Spain with anything I'm doing here right now, you know, I apologize in advance. I don't mean to insult your cuisine. I'm just doing this in a way that I've learned how to do it through from various teachers and through trial and error. A little bit from what I've seen traveling in Spain. And that's it.
Now you see, that's very nice of Kenji to say this. Even if you follow an authentic recipe and you make it exactly how, let's say, a paella is made in Valencia, you will always have somebody that says, this isn't right, even if it is made traditionally, because somebody may make it a little bit different in their house than, say, how you're making it, or this restaurant makes it a little different than that restaurant. I mean, there is a standard for Paella Valenciana. There is a pretty common standard that a lot of people do stick by, but it's not like you're adding chorizo to this.
Last but not least, rosemary. This, by the way, paella is a great dish to make over a campfire. If you bring all these ingredients with you camping, make this over a campfire and then get bundles and bundles of rosemary. Like if you got a rosemary bush in your backyard, you probably know that it just grows like hell and there's not much you can do about it. Paella is a great dish to do when you've got a ton of rosemary. So what you can do is build a campfire, make the paella on top of it, and then throw bundles of rosemary onto the fire below, and it will smell wonderful and season everything and make everyone really hungry. When I first started dating my wife, when I thought she was my girlfriend and she did not think I was her boyfriend, we went camping, and I made paella on the campfire mainly to impress her. So it's all worked out in the end.
What a funny story. If you're in a similar situation, you could try this, but I wouldn't expect the same results.
Bear in mind when you're tasting your broth for seasoning like this, that it's going to get more concentrated. So you want it to be slightly under-seasoned.
Kenji has some very good advice. You do want to taste it as you're cooking, and you do need it a little under-seasoned at that point. It should be tasty, but it shouldn't be salty, because it will reduce and it will concentrate.
Similarly, you know, like the idea that a paella must have chicken and rabbit and snails, for instance, to me, you know, it's sometimes a little silly, because, you know, the reason those things are used is because it's a peasant's dish, right? And snails and chicken and rabbit were things that you could just hunt for, and were well, maybe not the chicken, but the rabbit and the snails were things that you just hunt for and get for free. And so it was a peasant food, you know. The idea, I don't think, is that you necessarily need chicken and snail and rabbit. I think the more authentic idea is that you work with what you can get, and work with what you can afford, and work with what you have access to. So if that means all chicken for you, cool. And if you live, you know, like if you grew up where my dad did in Western Pennsylvania, and you trap raccoons or trap squirrels, then put that in your paella, and I'd say that's a pretty authentic paella. If your daughter has too many snails in her terrarium, you know, raid the terrarium and use the snails.
Paella is also a dish that you still commonly see people make here on Sundays, kind of like our Sunday roast in the UK. Well, here they typically make paella, at least in Catalonia and in Valencia. If anybody is watching that's from Andalucía, Asturias, País Vasco, Galicia, the Canaries. Let me know what you guys typically make on a Sunday for the family or for get-togethers.
All right, the last thing I'm going to add, I had these jarred piquillo peppers, which are not necessary. Another way you could do it is to use roasted red peppers, or nothing at all. You definitely don't need the peppers, but I'm just going to stick them on there. Piquillo peppers are like a really nice sweet, they're not spicy at all. They're a really nice sweet pepper. They have a little bit more flavor than a typical bell pepper does, and a little more tender flesh. Piquillo peppers. Get some lemon. Some people like to, make like patterns and stuff, and I prefer the kind of haphazard look.
Depends on the person, but you do see, especially at some of the nice places here, they make some very intricate patterns with the paellas.
All right, should we dig in and try some? Oof. That rosemary. Oh yeah. All right, so here we have that nice socarat, those brown crispy bits. All right, my daughter, I see her climbing out of the dog door. She's gonna come join me in a second, so I'm gonna take this opportunity to say goodbye, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Overall, I think that Kenji did do a good job. There were a few things that you could tweak to make it a little bit better. Using stock instead of just water, this is one. Using a bigger paella pan as well. Not using as much chicken, and also the size of the chicken, breaking it down a little more, because the portion sizes of these chickens, I mean, a piece this big, massive chickens. And also maybe not using the wok burner, because the wok burner is a little too powerful. Other than that though, Kenji did a really good job. He also explained it very well, and I really do like the first person perspective. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, guys, and let me know what you would like me to review next. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like, as this does help out my channel greatly, and head over to Kenji's channel to check out the rest of his delicious recipes. Be sure to check out this next video coming up here, and I will see you guys again very soon. Until next time, take care.